What's up, everyone? It's the Benchwarmers, and today we're going to be reacting to the All-Star rosters, which were just announced a couple days ago. And we're going to be looking at a few key selections, which kind of surprised us. So here's a graphic as to what players got selected and which players are starters and reserves. The draft is going to be this upcoming Thursday, so please stay tuned for that. So without further ado, let's look at our analysis.
So starting off, I just want to say overall, I think there haven't been too many surprises in this All-Star game. But one pretty big one that I want to talk about is Andrew Wiggins. And before I actually say why I think he's a surprise, I just want to say that he's been a great player this season. He averages 18 points per game on 49% shooting, 42% three-point shooting. It's also been really solid defensively too. I think this is definitely one of the best seasons of this year, of his career. And he also is the Warriors' number one defender. I think in terms of the player he guards, I know Draymond usually picks up the best player, but lately he's been guarding the best players on the opponent's team. So I think that really speaks to how he's been a huge part of the Warriors' success. So I think he's obviously a phenomenal player. But then to explain why he's a surprise, I think the other All-Star starters and even some of the reserves were definitely arguably better players. I think people are even debating if Andrew Wiggins deserves a reserve spot before this selection. So I think this goes to show that fan voting does have some weaknesses. Even guys like Clay were up there in voting, and he was poised to be an all-star if it was just done by fan voting. Same with Lakers players. I think Anthony Davis was also poised to be an all-star, even though he probably didn't deserve it. So as a Warriors fan, I think this is not acceptable, because I know there isn't a huge difference between starter and reserve, but overall, I think being fair matters more than just being loyal to your team. So I think in the future, Warriors fans should choose the players that actually deserve it rather than just players that they like. So I think this is really important, because being an all-star is an actual accolade. So when it comes down to business, you should focus on what actually matters more rather than what team you're loyal to. But overall, I think there haven't been too many surprises, so it's fine.
Yeah, then when you go to the reserves, there weren't really too many surprises either. Especially in the Western Conference, we actually predicted the reserves exactly. In the Eastern Conference, there were a few people who were kind of 50-50. So the first one I'd like to talk about is Chris Middleton. So during the season, he's been pretty good so far. He's averaging around 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists per game on the Bucks, who are currently the fourth seed. But overall, his efficiency is kind of not as good as it normally is. It's definitely still decent, but I mean, Middleton is known for being the guy who almost had a 50-40-90 season, and this season he only has 44% efficiency, which is okay. But overall, he's a decent player, and he definitely is potentially worthy of an all-star selection, but it's definitely close between him and a few other players. And those include Jaylen Brown. So Jaylen Brown's been very good as well, averaging 24 points with 6 rebounds and 3 assists. His efficiency has kind of been similar to Chris Middleton's also, but he is on the Celtics, who are the eighth seed. And it's I guess it's just a little bit strange to put someone who's on the eighth seed versus the fourth seed in. So it definitely does make sense that Jaylen Brown is in over him. But the one player I do think really deserves the spot over Jaylen Brown is Jarrett Allen. So Jarrett Allen is averaging 16 points on 67% efficiency. That obviously has to do with the fact that he's a center. But it's still very impressive what he's doing there. But defense is really where he shines, because he's averaging 11 rebounds and also 1.8 blocks this season, which is crazy. And he's just been the centerpiece of what has been the best defense in the league this season in terms of points against them per game. And overall, I just think that because the Cavs have such a good defense, they should get recognized for that in terms of the all-star roster. So something else that's interesting to note is that in the Western Conference, there's actually 2 centers on the reserves, whereas in the Eastern Conference, there's not even 1 center on the reserves. And I think that just shows how Jarrett Allen actually really deserves the spot, because in general, even though centers aren't really the players that fans want to see during all-star games because they're not the most flashy, I think they definitely deserve recognition for what they do, because Jarrett Allen is a super important player. And in general, centers are just a very important position. So I think that Jarrett Allen should have gotten this spot over Chris Middleton. But I mean, Middleton is still a great player. So it's not like a big deal that he's an all-star.
And finally, let's talk about Fred VanVleet. He was arguably one of the more surprising picks, but I really like the selection. Fred VanVleet's averaging 22 points per game, 7.5 assists, and almost 5 rebounds a game, with almost 2 steals a game for the 7 seed Raptors. And even though we did in our previous prediction video have LaMelo Ball making it over him, in hindsight, especially considering the few games played between then and now, I really think VanVleet cemented his place because he is leading the charge for a surging Raptors team who's beaten several amazing teams, including the Bucks twice, the Sixers, and I think they had a really close loss to the Nets when they were at full strength. So when you're looking at this team like the Raptors, they definitely do have a lot of good pieces like Siakam, like Anunoby, like their rookie Scotty Barnes. But I think Fred VanVleet definitely is leading the charge. He is a veteran who's been there since the championship year and even a couple of years before. And he's learned so many things so that in the absence of Kyle Lowry, when he's not there anymore, Fred VanVleet has still led the Raptors to being a very solid, very good team. And the fact that they are the 7th seed right now just shows how good they are. They're a surging team at the right point in the season, and they're coached extremely well. And Fred VanVleet's able to lead the offense and defensive unit, despite being undrafted and being arguably 5'11". He is still a very pesky defender, a very smart player, and he's able to be really efficient in his passing game. He only averages around 2.5 turnovers, which is quite surprising considering he's the primary ball handler on the team, compared to someone like LaMelo Ball, who is who's averaging over 3 turnovers a game. That brings me to LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball is on the slightly falling Hornets, who are now down to the 9th seed from being the 6th seed earlier in the year, and he's averaging around 20 points a game on a slightly worse efficiency, more rebounds, similar number of assists, and a worse defender overall. LaMelo Ball, in my opinion, is one of the worst parts about his game is his defense. Even though he has the frame to be an amazing defender, his defense is just not it. He feels like he's not in it on the defensive side at times, and that sometimes costs them games. Like there have been games versus players, some of the best point guards in the entire league, who have gone off against LaMelo Ball. Even though LaMelo Ball sometimes has these flashy good games, he isn't always in it on the defensive side, and that costs his team game. Additionally, I think something which costed him is that some of the votes got split between him and Miles Bridges, because there were definitely some coaches who believe that Miles Bridges deserved the spot over LaMelo Ball. So that definitely split the vote there, versus with the Raptors, who are the objectively better team and had one clear guy who could potentially be an all-star. VanVleet definitely deserved it for this year.
Yep, so that wraps it up for this video reacting to the all-star rosters. Overall, not too many huge surprises, but we're all definitely looking forward to the game coming up soon. This is the Benchwarmers, and we're signing out. See ya.